Hello and welcome to another episode of Chuchu is a Ranker, and on this episode we are going to be discussing the discography of Scottish indie legends Belle and Sebastian. The band were properly formed in 1996, when lead singer and songwriter Stuart Murdoch was allowed to record an LP as part of his college music business course. To this end, he recruited several local musicians from the Glasgow area, and thus Belle and Sebastian were born. Quickly signed to Jeepster Records, the band gained critical acclaim with their early releases, and were brought to wider attention in 1999 with their third LP, The Boy with the Arab Strap, which won the Best Newcomer award at that year's Brit Awards. After the band's fifth LP on Jeepster, The Ill-Fated Soundtrack Storytelling, the band jumped labels to Rough Trade Records and gained a modicum of chart success, although it was not to be maintained indefinitely. The band have continued to tour and record, with a discography now spanning 12 studio LPs, and still caught an impressive cult following. And as for my own fandom, yeah, I like Belle and Sebastian a good bit, and I have done ever since I stumbled across them in the late 90s. I did lose track of the band about 10 years ago though, and I hadn't heard any of their releases post Right About Love, but I'm back now ready to rectify that. So, without further ado, let's be complete rankers and rank up a storm. These are the studio albums of Belle and Sebastian ranked from worst to best. So we're going to be kicking off this list with Girls in Peacetime Want to Dance, which was the band's 9th LP from 2015. And here the band take a sharp turn into synthesizer-inflected dance rock with occasional post-punk overtones. It's almost as if the band heard what Arcade Fire did on their 2013 album Reflector and thought, we'll have some of that. Unfortunately, Belle and Sebastian haven't pulled it off nearly as well as Arcade Fire. In fact, for me, this is easily the band's weakest effort. It's overlong, it lacks musical subtlety, and has way too many uninteresting filler cuts on it. The back end of the record in particular is pretty dire. Enter Sylvia Plath has a fun galloping EDM disco pulse, but ultimately shoots itself in the foot by being a good minute or so over length. Perfect Couples has a chorus that feels melodically off, and parts of it don't really coalesce very well, while tracks like Ever Had a Little Faith and Play for Today end up meandering their way into ho-hum boredom. But there are some decent tunes scattered around as well. Nobody's Empire is a good opener that melds the older vibe of the band with a slick new paint job. The Party Line is a whole bunch of fun with its stomping dance beats and slick disco pop. The Cat with the Cream has a low melancholic atmosphere that appeals, while album highlight The Power of Three has some cool layering and an interestingly woozy atmosphere. So yeah, I mean, there's good and there's bad on this, but ultimately it's the length that really drags this one down. It's over an hour long and it just has too many fillers on it. Number 12 with a bullet and a mediocre 2.5 stars for Girls in Peacetime Want to Dance. Next up, we have a 2-for-1 sale with the band's two soundtrack albums, Storytelling from 2002 and Days of the Bagnalled Summer from 2019. And I'm lumping them together because there's not a whole lot to say about either one, and they both suffer from the same impediments. So the earlier soundtrack, Storytelling, was actually a frustrating experience for the band, as they had some significant difficulties communicating with the film's director, Todd Solondez, which resulted in only 6 minutes of the band's music actually being used in the project, which, must have sucked. Thankfully, the Simon Bird-helmed Days of the Bagnalled Summer went a bit more smoothly. Although, I do have to throw my hands up and say that I've seen neither of these movies. But as soundtrack listening experiences go, both Storytelling and Bagnalled Summer are fine. They're both largely instrumental and universally pleasant, but also not particularly impressive or memorable. Compared to each other, I'd say that Storytelling has the slightly better instrumental compositions, as tracks like Fiction and Nightwalk have a nice kind of melancholia to them, whilst Days of the Bagnalled Summer has superior vocal cuts, with tunes like Sister Buddha and the re-recorded version of Get Me Away From Here I'm Dying holding at least a modicum of interest. But ultimately, soundtracks are not really what I come to Belle and Sebastian for. I mean, they are fine for what they are, but to be honest, outside of making this list, it's unlikely that I'll ever spend much time with these two records. Still, I'll be kind and give both albums 3 stars. Coming in next, we have Late Developers, which was the band's 12th and most recent album to date from 2023. In fact, it was only released about a month ago at this time of recording. And it appears that the post-lockdown period was an extremely productive time for the band, as they managed to bang out both a bit of previous and this LP within a year of each other. But the short turnover doesn't exactly reflect well on Late Developers, as it inevitably leads to comparisons with its forebearer, A Bit of Previous, which, spoiler alert, is a far superior record. And that leaves Late Developers feeling like a bit of an afterthought, almost like it's comprised of tracks that weren't quite good enough to make their other stronger album. I mean, perhaps that's not the case at all, but it definitely kind of feels that way. But that's not to say that this is a really weak record, because it's not. It's merely alright. It's okay. It's like the definition of a 3-star album. The tracks on it are all universally pleasant, but many of them, such as When You're Not With Me, title track Late Developers, or Give a Little Time, just don't make any kind of lasting impression. It feels like there's very little in the way of essential material on this LP. But there are a couple of minor highlights. Opener Juliet Naked has a cool, stark atmosphere to it, comprised of only wiry guitars and Stuart Murdoch's vocals. When We Were Very Young is great with its swirlingly dark bass and synth and immediately hooky chorus. The Evening Star has a wonderful 1970s pop vibe with its funky bass and euphoric trumpets, while I Don't Know What You See in Me is a fun bit of modern Coldplay sounding megapop that works because it's completely unique within the band's discography and has a frisson of irony about it with its tossed off do-diddy-diddy chorus. So yeah, this is an utterly pleasant yet also somewhat mediocre addition to the band's catalogue, with a fistful of high spots surrounded by a brace of forgettable tunes. 3 stars. Next up, we have Right About Love, which was the band's 8th LP from 2010. And while this is still a pretty good record, it's here that Belle and Sebastian hit a bit of a brick wall. The band's previous 2 albums, Dear Catastrophe Waitress and The Life Pursuit, had seen the band either innovate or revel in their self-confidence. Conversely, this LP feels slightly unsure of itself, delivering a very meat and potato style soundscape, devoid of the usual musical subtlety that the band is so good at crafting. This is the sound of Belle and Sebastian set to maximum autopilot. But thankfully, even autopilot Belle and Sebastian can be pretty entertaining. Highlights on a basic yet decent LP include the opener, I Didn't See It Coming, which calls forward to the band's next album, Girls and Peacetime Want to Dance, with its infectious beats, although it's significantly better than anything from that following record. The Norah Jones duet Little Lou, Ugly Jack, Prophet John is fantastic with its bluesy atmosphere, and I love the melody on the crescendo of that track, it always gives me chills. The Stevie Jackson-led I'm Not Living in the Real World is a lot of fun with its constantly ascending guitar stomp. Read the Blessed Pages has a gorgeous stripped-back folk lilt. The Ghost of Rock School has a classic early period vibe to it, while I Can See Your Future has a mysterious sadness to its melody despite its blasting trumpets. And yeah, I really love that track by the way. And to be honest, all the other tracks are also pretty good too, but there are moments like the title track Right About Love or Come On Sister where the band is just retreading very familiar ground. While certain tracks like I Want the World to Stop are nice and catchy, but also feel a bit hollow and vacuous in comparison to the majority of the band's previous work. So yeah, this is a good record that I enjoy a lot, but it is undeniably the sound of the band starting to creak a bit. There's a kind of tiredness just lurking underneath the surface of this one. But as I said, I still like it a lot. 3.5 stars. Next up, we have the band's 3rd LP, The Boy with the Arab Strap, from 1998. So this record is the band's most iconic release, as it won the Best Newcomer award at the 1999 Brit Awards, which in turn gave the band much more exposure in the mainstream. And to this day, whenever I think of Belle and Sebastian, it's The Boy with the Arab Strap that immediately pops into my head, similar to The Queen is Dead with the Smiths. But being the most iconic doesn't necessarily equate to being the best, and so it is on this particular LP. I will, however, say straight off the bat that I do like this album and it is incredibly nostalgic for me, but I also think it's significantly overrated within the band's discography. So while this record does undeniably house some of the band's very best tunes, it also houses some of the very worst, most notably on its tail end. Roller Coaster, for example, is a bit of a closing dud, failing to spark much interest with its overlapping vocals. while Simple Things is so anonymous that I always forget that the track exists, despite having heard this record many times in my life. But the worst of all was the fairly dire chick factor with his unappealing melody and annoyingly stunted lyrics. Add into that some pleasant yet forgettably typical jangle fluff like the opening It Could Have Been a Brilliant Career and A Summer Wasting, and you have a record that is close to floundering. But as I said, the other side of the coin represents some of the very best of Belle and Sebastian. Is It Wicked Not to Care is one of the better Sarah Martin tunes, with her tender voice really standing out. Ease Your Feet in the Sea has some really dark lyrics with suicidal tendencies to sink your teeth into, while Seymour Stein impresses with a really cool guitar tone and interesting tales of record company mogul meetings replete with Johnny Marr references. But the best offerings come in the form of Sleep the Clock Around, Dirty Dream No. 2 and the title track The Boy with the Arab Strap. Sleep the Clock Around is fantastic with its killer melody and slowly building composition, and I really love that final explosion of trumpets and bagpipes. It's just really cool. Dirty Dream No. 2 meanwhile has a great stomping energy to it and a catchiness that belies its lyrical complexity, while The Boy with the Arab Strap is amazing with its lovely upbeat composition framing an unforgettable set of eloquent lyrics. I mean, the cavalcade of iconic verbiage that spills out from the tune is frankly incredible. Colour my life with the chaos of trouble. We all know you're soft because we've all seen you dancing. We all know you're hard because we've all seen you drinking from noon until noon again. Everyone suffers in silence a burden. The man who drives minicabs down in Old Compton, the Asian man with his love-hate affair with his racist clientele. Mwah, chef's kiss, just great lyrics. So yeah, all in all, this is a bit of a mixed bag, but the high spots are just too high to dismiss and carry the record comfortably into the safety zone. 3.5 stars. Next up, we have Fold Your Arms Child, You Walk Like a Peasant, which was the band's fourth LP from the year of 2000. And my feelings about this album are almost the polar opposite of the previous entry. I think The Boy with the Arab Strap is fairly overrated, whereas this record is criminally underrated. And it was here that the critics led a backlash against the band, accusing them of becoming stale. But for me, that was the last album. This one feels like a bounce back to a more consistent form, albeit admittedly without the previous record's towering high spots. And what we have here is the band playing more confidently with minimalism, while also widening their sonic palette. And it's here on Fold Your Arms Child, You Walk Like a Peasant where the other members of Belle and Sebastian make their biggest mark, with Stevie Jackson and Sarah Martin dominating 4 of the LP's 11 cuts, which gives the record a nice sense of variety. And yeah, I like every track on this album. I could literally reel off every one as a highlight, but for sanity's sake I will restrain myself from doing that. Still, Opener, I Fought in a War is one of the most gloriously catchy pop-orientated moments from the band's early period. The Model feels like the ending of a trilogy that also takes in the earlier Expectations and Seeing Other People, and is a nice slice of chamber pop with a cool harpsichord accompaniment. Don't Leave the Light On Baby is a personal favourite of mine. I love its low minimalism, the old school electric keyboards, the dramatic strings and the build up to the song's crescendo. It's just an instantly mesmerising tune. The maudlin piano ballad, The Chalet Lines, meanwhile, gives you a hard slap to the face with its stark lyrics about the emotional devastation of rape. Nice Day for a Sulk has a weirdly off-kilter melody that feels like being drunk on a summer afternoon, which suits the lyrics perfectly. Family Tree, meanwhile, is my favourite ever Sarah Martin track, due to its irresistible jangle composition, and it's also pretty personally nostalgic for me as I used to play it regularly as a cover in an old band that I was in. While closing track There's Too Much Love is great with its stomping pace and twee upbeat vibe, even though the lyrics are pretty downbeat. And I love that lyric, it's best to finish as I started, with my face head down, staring at the brown Formica. Just great stuff. So yeah, I mean, I have nothing but love for this record. It's wonderful, I think it's underrated and unfairly dismissed. And easy, 4 stars. So we're going to be kicking off the top 5 with a bit of previous from 2022. And yeah, after a couple of comparatively tepid releases, the band suddenly came raging back to form with this absolute tub thumper of an LP. And this is easily the heaviest and most energetic album of the band's career thus far, but without sacrificing the core emotional aspects that makes the band's music truly shine. In fact, tracks like the Stevie Jackson fronted 1950s waltz time ballad Deathbed of My Dreams, or the icy guitar lines of the briny tearful epic Sea of Sorrow represent the best touches of emotion seen since the life pursuits Dress Up Anew from over a decade earlier. Likewise, the stripped back jangle of Do It For Your Country also calls back to the band's halcyon period with its lovely arpeggiated guitar work. But it's the energetic bangers that really define this album's soundscape. Opener Young and Stupid immediately informs you of inbound quality with its catchy indie rock and gorgeous trumpets and strings. Prophets on Hold has a glorious 80s pop glide to it, and I love those pristine synths and the way that the chorus picks up like it's about to go straight through the goddamn roof. Unnecessary Drama is as thumping as Belle and Sebastian ever got, with its moss-inducing catchiness and badass rampaging harmonicas. Meanwhile, If They're Shooting At You slows things down for a fantastic soul journey into smooth R&B and utilises gospel singers in exactly the right way, while the ELO flavoured Come On Home has a beautiful 1970s pop flutter to it. So yeah, this is just a great return to form for the band. I mean, the only negative thing I can reasonably say about this LP is the fact that Sarah Martin's vocals are a bit poor on it. She always sounds like she has a cold during her performances. Still, that is sheer nitpicking. This record is surprisingly delightful. 4 stars. Next up, we have The Life Pursuit from 2006, which was the band's 7th LP. And until a bit of previous, this was the band's big chest-beating moment, soaked in self-confidence and scoring the band the biggest chart successes of their career. And yeah, this record has such a wonderful, joyous atmosphere. It feels almost like a Belle and Sebastian victory lap. But far from resting on their laurels, this sees the band experimenting with various elements of 1970s pop, and pushing on their sound in myriad new directions. Opener, The Act of the Apostle, kicks off immediately with something different, as it has an industrial starkness to it that hadn't been heard from the band before. White Collar Boy has some great fuzzing bass, also new for the band, as well as some fun call and response vocals and an insistent chorus. Although quite how you end up with egg in your pants, as the lyrics say, is anybody's guess. The Blues Are Still Blue has a fun 70s glam influence on it, as Stuart Murdoch channels Mark Bolan, while Suki in the Graveyard is a kick-ass punky edition with the Euphorics Pulse. But still, the hits, they just keep on coming. Song for Sunshine and We Are the Sleepyheads bring a good sense of hazy psychedelia to the table. For the Price of a Cup of Tea is... But... For the price of a cup of pee? For the price of a cup of tea is a great bit of slick, upbeat R&B. Another Sunny Day is an incredibly tuneful jangle track with a newfound muscular quality to it, while my personal favourite on the album, Dress Up Anew, is probably the last moment of true lyrical excellence from the band, as Murdoch sings from a woman's perspective in the first person, delving into a tale of splintered friendship and the regrets and hopes of reconciliation that come with it. It's just a really moving tune, and the chorus of, "When things don't go my way, I have to blow up in the face of my rival. I swear and ran to make quite an arrival. The men are surprised by the language. They act so discreet, but they are hypocrites. So fuck them too," is absolutely amazing. So yeah, this is a fantastic album full of joy with a cornucopia of memorable tunes to dig into. To be honest, I can't think of much to say about this record in a negative capacity. Perhaps there is superior lyrical content on the earlier albums. Still, this is a nigh on perfect set of songs. 4.5 stars. Coming in third place we have If You're Feeling Sinister, which was the band's second LP from 1996. And yeah, 1996 was a banner year for the band, with both this and their debut Tiger Milk setting up the Belle and Sebastian archetypal sound with magnificent aplomb, forever changing the face of twee indie jangle pop in the process. And while The Boy with the Arab Strap remains the band's most iconic release, I think it's fair to say that If You're Feeling Sinister is the most critically lionized one. And it's very easy to see why. The LP has an endlessly charming, ramshackle nature to it, like it was recorded in the most lo-fi way and as quickly as possible. And as for Stuart Murdoch's vocals, well, the guy can barely hold a tune at this point. And those things would usually be an impediment for most bands, but here they really work in Belle and Sebastian's favour. As I said, it's just endlessly charming. And then you have the songs themselves, of which there are 10, and they're all great. Stars of Track and Field is a fantastic opener, with its epic building jangle composition framing lyrics like, "In his blue velour and silk, you liberated a boy I never rated, and now he's throwing discus for Liverpool and Witness." Dylan in the Movies has an oddly moving melody, and an effective use of reverb during the instrumental breaks that teases out some nice emotional textures. Fox in the Snow is absurdly beautiful, with its gentle guitars and pianos heightened by a low maudlin cello line. Get Me Away From Here I'm Dying is a quintessential Belle and Sebastian tune that perfects their brand of super catchy, lyrically astute jangle, while title track If You're Feeling Sinister is also great with its subtle atmosphere building. And the closing lyric, "If you're feeling sinister, go off and see a minister, but chances are you'd feel better if you stayed at home and played with yourself," always makes me smile. I mean, I could go on. Mayfly is a lovely upbeat bit of summery jangle pop. Me and the Major has a scrabbling urgency to it, while my favourite off the album, The Boy Done Wrong Again, is absolutely sublime. I love the way that the chord sequence just drips with misery, as does the starkly cold violin line, and Stuart Murdoch's cracked and broken vocals are just perfect. Mwah, chef's kiss, I absolutely love that tune. So yeah, this is a classic of the indie jangle genre. It is essential listening. 5 stars. Next up, in second place, we have Dear Catastrophe Waitress from 2003, which was the band's 6th LP and first on Rough Trade Records, as the soundtrack storytelling had fulfilled the band's contract for the super indie label Jeepster. And with more label muscle came a more direct and muscular pop sound, with the band delivering more confident pop hooks than ever before, while still retaining the superb lyrical complexity. And although the quality of the band's lyrics would diminish going forward, it's here that the template for modern Belle and Sebastian was firmly established. And yeah, this album absolutely rules. There are more phenomenal highlights than you can shake the proverbial stick at. Step Into My Office Baby kicks the record off with a fun indie epic that feels like the band's ode to Bohemian Rhapsody with its always changing structure. And to this day, every time I put on a kipper tie, I always think of this song and it always makes me smile. Title track Dear Catastrophe Waitress has a galloping pace and some fun lyrics that pull you into the track. I'm a Cuckoo is amazing with his upbeat Thin Lizzy inspired guitar riff framing a jaw-dropping lyric full of empathy and the sadness of a broken relationship, and the final stanza always gets me right in the gut. I'd like to see you, but really I should stay away and let you settle down. I've got no claims to your crown. I was the boss of you, and I loved you. You know I loved you. It's all over now. And I was there for you when you were lonely. I was there when you were bad. I was there when you were sad. Now it's my time of need. I'm thinking, do I have to plead to get you by my side? Mwah, chef's kiss and a couple of tears for that one. Also, because I live in Japan, an extra nod for mentioning Harajuku. And also, added to that, a pro tip for Tokyo tourists: don't catch the train between Harajuku, Shibuya and Shinjuku, just walk it, it's way more fun. Anyway, back to the banging tunes. Wrapped Up in Books is a nice autopilot indie pop tune with its driving bass and instantly hooky lyrics. Lord Anthony is superb with its gently jangling guitars and moving lyrics about being bullied at school, and the relief of growing older and just being done with all that crap. Roy Walker has an irresistible sense of jiving 70s pop that is a lot of upbeat fun, while closer Stay Loose is brilliant with its wiry build-up and rocking finale. But my favourite off of this is the gorgeous epic If You Find Yourself Caught in Love. I mean, sure, it pulls on the Christian messaging pretty thickly, which I, as an agnostic, am somewhat hardened to, but I still adore this track, as although it's not my beliefs, I appreciate the good-natured passion and the euphoric composition of the tune. Plus the lyric, "If you find yourself out of love, tell your boss that you've gone away, down your tools for a holiday. But if you're going off to war, then I wish you well, but don't be sore if I cheer the other team, because killing people's not my scene. I prefer to give the inhabitants a say, before you blow their town away. I like to marvel at the random beauty of this simple village girl. Why should she be the one that's killed?" I mean, jeez, those are words that we can all get something out of in these glum times that we live in. Mwah, chef's kiss again. So yeah, I mean, I'm skipping over so many other great tunes like Asleep on a Sunbeam or Piazza New York Catcher, but there are only finite minutes in a day, so I'll stop there and simply say that this LP is incredible. I love it. 5 stars. So here we are at the top of the mountain, and the Belle and Sebastian gold medal is going to go to the band's debut LP Tiger Milk from 1996. As I mentioned in the intro, this album was recorded as part of a music business course at Stuart Murdoch's university. It was initially released as a 1,000 copy limited edition vinyl and didn't see a full mainstream release until 1999. And yeah, for me, this is the perfect Belle and Sebastian record. It has that ramshackle amateurish nature that gave If You're Feeling Sinister so much charm, but it also has a real streak of youthful zeal to it, and a wiry energy that turns a good few cuts into banging rockers. And then of course you have the brilliantly consistent songwriting and the exceptional lyrics. It's just an awesome package. And as for highlights, well yeah, that would be pretty much everything. The only single fault I would level at this record is the production on the vocals of the track Electronic Renaissance, which, let's be honest, are kinda garbage. But even that track ultimately gets a pass because the musical composition is a lot of fun, and there's a real sweetness to the ambition there. But everything else on this is pretty much flawless. The State I Am In kicks the record off with a jangle masterpiece, as the track builds up slowly over some of the most ear-catching lyrics ever put to tape. I mean, there are so many great lines in that song, but I'll plump for these ones. The priest in the booth had a photographic memory for all he had heard. He took all of my sins and he wrote a pocket novel called The State I Am In. And so I gave myself to God. There was a pregnant pause before he said, okay. Now I spend my days turning tables round in Marks and Spencer's. They don't seem to mind. I mean, geez, the lyrics are just so unique and interesting, and they just burn themselves into your memory. Expectations kicks off that archetypal Belle and Sebastian sound, and again the track is just so full of insanely quotable lines such as, "For careers you say you want to be remembered for your art. Your obsession gets you known throughout the school as being strange. Making life-size models of the Velvet Underground in clay." Just, yeah, fantastic lyrics. Even more so when you consider the fact that Stuart Murdoch didn't even know who the Velvet Underground were when he wrote those lyrics, he just thought it sounded cool. You're Just a Baby has that wiry stomp I mentioned and is a lot of fun. And talking about wiry fun, I Could Be Dreaming absolutely kicks ass, with its scratchy phaser guitars gathering energy throughout the track, leading to a supremely satisfying jangle rock out at the finale. We Rule the School, meanwhile, is utterly beautiful, with its lovely piano lines elevated by weeping violins and gorgeously fluttering flutes. My Wandering Days Are Over is another excellent twee jangle tune with an appealing melody and lyrics that immediately pull you in. While Mary Jo is a lovely closer with its wispy chamber pop blues and lyrics like, "Mary Jo, you're looking thin. You're reading a book, The State I Am In, but it doesn't help you at all. What you want is a cigarette and a thespian with a caravanette in hall." My favourite off of this though is the absolutely banging late album epic, I Don't Love Anyone, which is a song that makes me always want to scream out every line every time I hear it. The energy and the build up is fantastic, as is the sing-along refrain, and the chorus, "If there's one thing I learnt when I was still a child, it was to take a hiding. If there's one thing I learnt when I was still a child, it was to be alone." Mwah, chef's kiss. It's just so damn catchy, but it's also so damn dark. Jesus. So yeah, I really love this LP. Every track on it has its own wonderful charm point, and they all linger long in the memory. And it is, for me, my favourite of Belle and Sebastian's works. A very easy 5 stars. So now we've come to the end of this deep dive, the question remains, did I gain more appreciation for the band? Well, I already really loved Belle and Sebastian, but sure, why not? It was delightful to revisit all of these wonderful records, and A Bit of Previous was a fantastic album that I hadn't heard before, so yeah, wonderful stuff. And that's it, that's my list, but of course that won't be your list, so please sound off in the comments section and tell me how you'd rank these records. Like, share, subscribe and all that other kind of YouTube jazz. Feel free to check out the Spotify Belle and Sebastian best of that I personally curated. Link in the description below. Make sure to take care of yourself, but most importantly, just keep on ranking.
My brother had confessed he was gay to beg heat from me for a while. He stood up with a sailor friend. He made it known upon my sister's wedding day. In a rush to save a kid from being deported, now she's in love. Oh, I was so touched, I was moved to kick the crutches from my crippled friend. She was not impressed, 'cause I cured her on the Sabbath.